Okay, so polynomial inequalities. We're going to spend a lot of time later in the course on polynomials, but right now we're going to deal with inequalities that deal with polynomials. They can get quite complicated, so the way we make it not complicated for you is by giving you a graph. So there's not a whole lot of arithmetic that happens here. It's reading from a graph is what you'll do. So I want to look at where is 2x cubed plus x squared minus x plus 4, where is that greater than 0, okay? That's a pretty much more complicated problem than what we've seen so far. That's why I give you the graph, and you'll be able to read this information from the graph. So let's look at this graph and get oriented a little bit. This axis that goes right here horizontally, what is that axis? That is my x-axis, okay? Somebody's phone can get turned off. Is that right? This axis that goes up and down is what? The y-axis, okay? So that is my y-axis, okay? Now, these points that you see right here, okay, where the x's are, those are called the places where y is. Those are called the zeros, okay? So there are going to be several words for this all throughout the course. It can be called the zeros or the roots or the x-intercepts. All of these mean the same thing. X-intercept, where does it intercept or touch the x-axis? Y-intercept, where does it intercept or touch the y-axis? Okay, you guys have that. So if I say zeros or roots or x-intercepts, it all means the same thing. So what are the coordinates of the zeros of this function? What is this first one? -5, 0. Now, if I just wrote -5, I'm getting partial credit on this one, okay? -5, 0. What's the next point? -4, 0. Again, full credit is I write -4, 0 with parentheses around it. What's the next one? 0, 0. And there's one more at 2, 0, okay? Those are all the zeros. That's where this function equals 0, okay? There's only 4 spots that this whole graph equals 0. Now, this inequality is asking for where it is what? Greater than 0. Where do you think by looking at the graph, my graph is greater than 0? Well, okay, yeah. So first, do you know, where is it equal to 0? Right here, right here, right here, and right here. Where do you think it would be greater than 0? So this is where it equals, this is where the function equals 0. Where do you think it's greater than 0? You think above or you think below? Above. Above is where it's going to be greater than 0. So if I look at this graph, here's a section where that graph is greater than 0. Here is a section where that graph is also greater than 0, okay? So what I've listed here, actually the zeros of the graph, that's what you see here, okay? So if I'm looking at where is this graph greater than 0, those are the pieces that you see above the x-axis. Now, what I asked for here, let me just be specific. What's the difference between asking where it's greater than 0 and where it's greater than equal to 0? What's the difference there? Okay, so if it's greater than 0, when I give interval notation, what does that look like? What's the difference in greater than and greater than equal to in interval notation? Brackets or parentheses, okay? So let's start with this one first. Intervals where it is greater than 0. Now by intervals, I mean x-axis. So think of yourself, you're in a car right here, and you're traveling along the x-axis, okay? If I'm at this point, is my graph greater than 0 or less than 0 when I'm traveling along right here? Where is the graph? Where is it below 0? Yeah, okay, this keeps on going forever and ever, okay? Okay. If I'm right here sitting on the x-axis, is the graph of this function on the axis, above the axis, or below the axis? Now, when I'm here, this is my graph. The graph is below. Okay, so this graph is less than 0. Okay, if I keep traveling here, it's less than 0 until I get to here, and now it is what? Equal to 0. Okay, at this point, it's equal to 0. As I go from here to here, the graph is what? Greater than 0. So it is greater than 0 from -5 to -4. Okay, so as I travel from -5 to -4, I'm greater than 0. Okay, now let's keep on going. After I leave -4 and I keep going, where's the graph? Less than 0. I get to 0 and that's equal to 0. Here it's less than 0. And now what does it start to do when I get here? It's greater than 0. And if I keep on traveling forever, what will the graph do? It stays greater than 0. So it's greater than 0 between -5 and 4 and between, what is that number, 2 and infinity. That's where the graph is greater than 0. When you highlight this graph, when you highlighted, there were 2 sections you said that were greater than 0. So those, I need those in interval notation. It's the interval from -5 to 4 and the interval from whatever that number is, 2 to infinity. Okay? Now, intervals where it is greater than or equal to 0. Okay? So same thing, if I'm traveling here, I get this point and it's equal to 0, right? At -5. So -5, what kind of bracket or what kind of enclosure? This is going to be a bracket, okay? So from -5 to -4, and I get a bracket. So that's where it's greater than or equal to 0. Now I see that it is less than 0 until I get to what number? Yeah, 0, okay? That point works. And then it's negative, and then it starts to be positive when I get to, what's this number? 2. From 2 to where? Infinity, okay? So these answers here are always intervals on the x-axis, okay? So this is where it's greater than or equal to 0. This is where it's greater than 0. Okay, I'm going to erase a lot of this stuff because we're going to keep on working on this graph. Now, let's move on to the next question here. Intervals where I am less than or equal to 0. Okay, so if I look at this graph, less than or equal to 0, if I'm here, do you think I'm looking for things above or below? Below. So how many intervals? So this looks like less than or equal to 0. This looks like less than 0. And this looks like less than 0. So that's where the graph is less than 0. Now, to answer the question where it's less than or equal to 0, I only travel on the x-axis. So if I start over here, when I'm here, is my graph below the axis or above? Below. So that's less than 0. So I am less than 0 out here at -infinity. And then what happens until I get to what number? -5. So that first interval is from -infinity to -5. Infinity always has a parentheses. Since this is less than or equal to 0, what kind of enclosure goes around that -5? A bracket, okay? Okay, now, if I keep traveling, if I go from here to here, from this point to this point, am I below the axis? No, I'm above, okay? So then now, when do I start to go below the axis again? When I get to this number. What number is that? -4. So now, I go from -4, and I'm asked for when it's less than or equal to 0. So if I travel along here, I'm less than or equal to 0, less than or equal to 0, less than or equal to 0. What am I here? I'm equal to 0, okay? And then if I keep on traveling, I'm what? Less than or equal to 0. So I am less than or equal to 0 from here all the way over to here, okay? Now what you could do, you could say -4 to 0 and 0 to 2. That's okay. You could break that up. Or you could say it's -4 all the way to 2, okay? But in this case, from -4 over to 2, I am less than or equal to 0. Okay, so these intervals are always on the x-axis. Now, how does it change? How does this problem change if instead of asking for less than or equal to, I ask for only less than? Okay, so let's look at this same problem. Where am I less than 0? Okay, so start over here. If I start over here at -infinity, is my graph below the axis? Yeah, so I'm less than 0 until I get to -5. But since I asked for less than 0, what kind of enclosure goes on -5? Parentheses, okay? Okay, and then what happens from here to here? Am I less than 0? No. Less than 0 from here to here, right? That's what, -4 to 0. And that's where I have a parentheses, because I'm less than 0, but when I get to here, this is equal to 0. But I wanted less than. And then what's the other interval? From here to here, it's what? 0 to 2. Okay, how does this feel? I mean, it looks complicated, but I'm not doing computations, okay? I'm just reading the graph. Question, Ja'Cory? You got two choices. So on this one, if it's less than or equal to, I could write -4 to 0, 0 to 2, okay? But what happens if this includes 0 and this includes 0, this is the same thing as this. So I would take either one of those as the answer. If you want to always just break it up, that's fine. These are the same thing, okay? But you can tell that when I have strictly less than 0, I have to break it up, okay? Because it doesn't include either of those points, okay? So in most problems, I'm not going to ask you each of these different things. I'm going to ask you one or two of them, but this is just how you would answer each of those questions. So in all of these, you will be given an inequality and you'll be given a graph, okay? So let's look at another one here. Here's the inequality. It's this function. So I'm being asked to figure out, they're asking me to find out, when is this thing less than 0, okay? So on the graph, you can highlight, what are they asking me to find? What part of the graph are they asking me to find? The part that is what? Below the x-axis. So they're asking to say, what is the interval that goes from there to there, okay? So in this case, less than 0, what is the interval from there to there? What is that interval? -2 to 1. Because it's a less than, what kind of enclosures? Yeah, parentheses. So that's the answer to this one. You know, where is this function less than 0? Now, what if instead of that question, you have been asked this one, where is it greater than or equal to 0? So in this one, where are the sections of the graph that are greater than or equal to 0? Where is it? The parts that are greater than or equal to 0 means above the x-axis. So how many pieces are there that do that? It's this and this, okay? Where is this function greater than or equal to 0? Where is it above the x-axis? Now the interval is on the x-axis, so I got to find this interval. If I'm over here and I'm traveling in this direction, left to right, is my graph at this point above the axis? Yeah, this keeps on going forever, remember? So I'm above the axis until I get to where? -2. So what is that interval? Yeah, to -2. Because it's greater than or equal to, what goes around this -2? A bracket, okay? And then this other interval, this starts at the number what? 1, and I keep going out until I get to infinity. So that interval is 1 to infinity with a bracket. So how does it's feeling okay? Is it getting there? Okay, this is all it is for this section. It's reading from the graph. There's no computations or absolute values or isolating x or whatever. You get that clue from this is a less than, this is a greater than or equal to. Okay, so what this means is, this means all the parts of the graph that are above 0 or equal to 0. This means all the parts of the graph that are strictly below 0. Okay, so I cannot include these 2 points. Now I can also ask you for the 0. What are the zeros there? -2, 0, and what? 1, 0. Those are the zeros of this graph. So that's also a fair game question. By looking at the graph, where are the zeros? Okay. Now you might see a problem like this that says, I want you to find the solution to this inequality. Okay. When you see this, I don't like that inequality unless I see what on one side? 0. That's how all my graphs have been working. What could I do to get a 0 on one side of this? Add 18x to both sides. And that would give me x to the 4th minus 2x cubed minus 9x squared plus 18x greater than 0. And what will always happen in these problems, because you've been living right, is the graph you're going to see is, this is the graph. I'm going to graph that for you, okay? And now it's just a question of asking, where is it greater than 0? So before I do that, what are the zeros of this graph? Yeah, negative 3, 0. Yep, 0, 0. 2, 0. And looks like 3, 0. There are 4 places where the graph crosses the axis. Okay, so there are 4 zeros to this graph. Now, give the solution. What does it mean, give the solution? What am I asking for in this problem? Where it's greater than 0. So I'm asking for where is it greater than 0. So if it helps, if you've got a highlighter, I'm asking for this, this, and this. There are going to be how many intervals? 3, okay? Because it's strictly greater than, I'm going to be dealing with parentheses here instead of brackets, okay? Now, the intervals. So I start on the x-axis. I'm greater than 0 from where? Negative infinity up until what? Yeah, so from negative infinity to negative 3. Okay, and then where's the next interval? Yeah, 0 to 2. And the last one is what? 3 to infinity. Okay. So that is the solution where this graph is greater than 0. Okay. Now, how would that change if I had asked for greater than equal to 0? Yeah, so that would be from negative infinity to negative 3. And I would have a bracket here on the negative 3. And then it would be from 0 to 2 with brackets. And then from 3 to infinity with brackets around the 3. So again, the infinity always has a parentheses. And the difference between this parentheses and bracket is the difference between greater than or greater than equal to. Now, if I had asked for where is this solution less than 0, okay, strictly less than 0, how many places do you see that on the graph? Yeah, it happens from here to here and from there to there. So on the x-axis, what is that first interval with a strictly greater than? It's what? Interval from where? Yeah, negative 3 to 0. And then what's the next interval? 2 to 3, okay? And then if I had asked that, do I ask the next question? Oh, I did not. That's where I stopped. If this had been less than or equal to, then those would be square brackets. Yeah. Pardon me?
Why wouldn't you start off with infinity?
Where?
On this one.
Where is it less than 0? It's only in less than 0 is from here to here and here to here. Nowhere else is it. So if you look at it, it's
only infinity if it's like this right here.
Yeah, like this one. When we get to that one, we'll see it. Okay. Another way to do this, so if you're having trouble with this, is when I'm asking for greater than equal to 0, if you've got a piece of paper, if I'm asking for greater than equal to 0, it doesn't work on the projector, but on paper would. I'm trying to cover up. Like if on your paper, if you covered up this, it tells you, okay, that's what I'm asking for. When it asks for less than 0, if you cover it up, then you're only looking for that part. So again, it doesn't work too well with the projector. Okay, so let's get to this example because this one points out something we also need to look at. So, polynomial, where are the zeros? So roots, zeros, solutions, x-intercept, those all mean the same thing. What are those points? Yeah, negative 4, 0. What? Negative 2, 0. What else? is 0, 0, and let's see what, 3, 0, and 5, 0. Okay, quite a few of those, okay? Now, I'm asking for where is this greater than 0, okay? So on the graph, it might help to highlight greater than 0. That's this part of the graph, this part of the graph, and this part of the graph, okay? Now, the answer comes on the x-axis. So that's why I always travel on the x-axis from left to right. So what is the interval from here to here? This first one. Yeah, -4 to -2, because it's greater than what kind of enclosures? Parentheses, okay? What's the next interval? Yeah, 0 to 3. And then what's the next interval? 5 to infinity. Okay? Now, what if I had asked for where is this thing less than or equal to 0? That means I'm looking what to the x-axis? I'm looking what, above or below? Below the x-axis. So where does that happen? That happens right here, and right here. Okay? So on the x-axis, I'm traveling on the x-axis. What's the interval that gets me from here to here? This first interval from here to here. Yeah, -infinity to what? -4. What goes around the -4? A bracket, because of this being less than or equal to. What's the next interval? Yeah, -2 to 0. And the last interval here is what? 3 to 5. Okay, so you guys work on the next one here. So the next one, you work on this. Remember, the first step, you want to get a 0 on one side and then use that information to graph it. Or not, it's already graphed, but to answer the solution. got space, draw something like this. So we'll put this at, we'll say, -7, -3, 4, and 5. Okay. So this is, I've drawn the graph of f of x. Okay. And I want to ask you, where is f of x less than or equal to 0? And then where is f of x greater than 0? Okay. So first of all, let's figure out what all the zeros are. What are the zeros? Yeah, -7, 0. It's not just -7, it's a point. It has an x and y coordinate. -3, 0. 4, 0. And what's the other one? 5, 0. Okay. Now, where is this graph less than 0? I'm asking for where is it sitting below the x-axis. Okay. How many pieces of this graph are sitting below the axis? This piece, and this piece. Okay. Now, my interval is on the x-axis. Okay. So this first interval, the first interval that gets me up to -7 is from where to where? Yeah. So negative infinity up to -7. What kind of enclosure around the -7? Bracket, because of that less than or equal to. Okay. Now let's move on. Where's the next interval? If I'm traveling on the x-axis, the next interval is from where? -3 to 4. With brackets. Okay. Now think carefully. Where's the next interval? Okay. Who says 5 to -infinity? Okay. Any other choices? It's 5 to positive. Here's what a common mistake. It's 5 to infinity. What you want to do, you want to say it's 5 and then -infinity. But remember, which axis do I travel on? X-axis. So this interval is from -infinity to -7. This interval is from 3 to 4. This interval is from 5 to infinity. I travel on the x-axis. So this last one is 5 to infinity. Okay. These intervals are all on the x-axis. So this first interval, -infinity to -7, -3 to 4, 5 to infinity. Okay. You see that, Michael? Okay. As I said, I'm not picking on it. I'm just saying that that's a common mistake. That visually, you see this arrow. This graph, the y value is headed to -infinity, but I'm not looking for the y value. I'm looking for the x interval. And so, what if I then ask for where is this graph greater than 0? Okay. That's going to be from here to here and here to here. And what are those intervals? Yeah. -7, -3, and then what? 4 to 5. Okay. And that should be it. Okay. So really, that's all that's happening in this unit. Okay. So you may have, when you see something like this that's not including 0, just move that to the other side, get it to an inequality that involves 0. And it's either going to be greater than, equal to, less than, equal to. And then if it's a less than variety, you're looking for where does the graph go below the axis. If it's a greater than variety, you look for where it's above. If you see greater than, equal to, less than, or equal to, you're going to be dealing with brackets. Everything else is going to be with parentheses. And then, like I said, pay close attention to when you get to something like this. You're traveling on the x-axis, so this interval is 5 to infinity. Not tempted to say 5 to -infinity. Okay. So you've got time to, guys, take a look at the homework. This is all that's on the quiz. Okay. So there'll be maybe 1 or 2 problems like this, but then the other stuff will just be the inequality stuff we've been doing. Okay. So that quiz we have on Tuesday.